And I would remind you, I know we have a couple more speakers y'all have asked about. Let's stay focused on the time if you can, please.
I will do my best. My name is Arthur Kutcher. I'm a resident of Mount Vernon Place. I'm a graduate of Yale University and the University of California, Berkeley, with degrees in architecture and environmental design. I was the planning officer for the old city of Jerusalem in its historic area. I've written 2 books on architecture, planning, landscape architecture. One is called The New Jerusalem, the other Looking at London, published by Thames and Hudson in London and New York and MIT here as well. I was going to speak on aesthetics, and I will in a minute. I just wanted to make 2 points about technicalities about landscape architecture and trees. The 8-inch caliper trees being proposed by the Conservancy to replace the ones they're going to remove, the survival rate of these trees is much lower than trees smaller. And no matter how carefully done, the chances of some of them fail are fairly high. So the larger and more mature the tree, the greater the transplant shock. That has to be borne in mind. And also, according to good landscape practice, the canopy that the Conservancy maintains will be developed will happen a good deal more slowly than the plan seems to imply. As far as the excavation and the deep digging and the trenching, all this is to promote further, according to the Conservancy plan, further intensive uses of the park. But these intensive uses, again, according to good landscape procedures, are at odds with good horticultural practice because the plantings simply don't have time to recover from one use to the next. And I think we have to remember these are very small and very fragile parks. They're beautiful historic parks, and their overuse is the cause of much of the damage that we see. So a program of management and control of uses and events is extremely important and should be emphasized rather than great deep trenching, which will dig up the park for between 18 months and 7 years, depending on the scheduling that the Conservancy has set. I will try to be very brief about the aesthetic issues. The Department of the Interior has set out 4 categories of cultural landscapes which can be either preserved or rehabilitated or protected. Historic sites, ethnographically valuable landscapes. The 3rd category, which apparently the Conservancy thinks that the Mount Vernon trees, the proposed trees, belong to, is an individual design or work of art representing the most significant style or period which gives the site its main aesthetic and historic value. I don't believe that's the case with the tree planting plan that's being proposed. The restoration or the repair, certainly, of the Curry Hastings plan is an important part, but it is not the element which gives Mount Vernon Place its historical value and makes it a National Historic Monument. Actually, that is the monument, to be literal. The fourth category that the Department of Interior says which would qualify a cultural landscape for preservation or rehabilitation or restoration is what they call an historical vernacular. This is quite different than the finished work of art. This is something that's grown up and evolved organically, representing the tastes and values of successive generations. Our Alliance are certain that the Mount Vernon parks are an excellent example of just such a vernacular, and that the present trees, the good ones, most of them, are an essential part of this vernacular and deserve appropriate protection and care. The trees, together with the surrounding architecture, combine to form what urban planners call, and most people recognize as, an ensemble, where the elements come together, playing their role in a process of mutual adjustment and accommodation. The spirit of the place. Each of the parks has its own character. They do not possess the Parisian classical uniformity of the Palais Royal of the Tuileries, cited as models by the Conservancy plan. This comparison is spurious and irrelevant. The Mount Vernon parks differ in their proportions, their lengths, widths, and their topography. The north and west parks are nearly flat. The east and south slope strongly down from the monument. And the architecture around the parks also display a distinctly non-classical quality of unity in variety. An eclectic richness of contrasting styles, heights, colors, materials, and details. A unique, individualistic amalgam of styles, which have blended together harmoniously over more than a century in the spirit of mutual accommodation. That is the spirit of the place. The spirit of the times, then and now. Each era expresses its own tastes and its values in its politics, in its view of the world, and in its art. We need, first of all, to evaluate and appreciate the Currier Hastings plan in its setting. Very nice, American City, beautiful Baroque of 1916. It was, by the way, at the time it was built, already out of date, already under strong attack both around the world, in artistic circles, and here in Baltimore. It received a very, very critical reception from the local public and from the Sun and from H.O. Mencken, among all things. Can I quote you very briefly a couple articles from the Sun at the time the plan was being proposed and being executed? 1917, Thomas Hastings. By the way, Carrier had died, but I believe in a car accident some 6 or 7 years previous to the plan. Thomas Hastings shows up and he offers his services to Mayor Preston to design the monument to Lafayette. We were about to go to war against Germany, and Lafayette seemed to be a perfect object for a monument. The plan was then developed, and in September 3rd, 1919, according to a Sun article, entitled, the headline, "Will Save Old Parks." That was, of course, the Frederick Law Olmsted Park, which the Carrier-Hastings plan more or less was going to destroy and replace. 1919, September 3rd, the Mayor Breuning, who replaced Mayor Preston, asked the New York architect Thomas Hastings to save as much of the old parks as he could. "We like them pretty much as they are," he said, "especially the Olmsted Pool and the West Parks." And then Hastings said he would come back in a few weeks with more details. Here's the revealing next article that we saw. January 5th, 1919. "Old shrubbery to go in the South Park. Quote, this is Mencken, long regarded by many as one of the chief attractions of the squares, the removal, the shrubbery in the South Parks, the removal seemed to surprise the Parks Board. They said the public had been given to understand that the shrubbery was not to be disturbed. J.C. Boyd, president of the Parks Board, hastened to add that the trees would not be disturbed, only the shrubbery, and then the trees were removed. July 7th, 1920, during construction, crust causes delay in the Mount Vernon parks. Excavation causes delays. Work held up. The contractor maintains the Mount Vernon parks have, quote, "the crustiest soil in America. They broke his steam shovel." He had to come in with workers with picks and shovels, and it took a good deal longer to cut through this crust, which is still there, and will probably delay further excavation. August 29th, 1920, completion of the work, finally finished more or less. The president of the Parks Board had in contemplation, again Mencken writes, the president of the Parks Board had in contemplation some special treatment for the West Park at least, to relieve the monotony of long green banks and lawns. That's the Carrier-Hastings plan as it was received at the time. And finally, December 5th, 1920, headline, "Artists unmoved by the new Mount Vernon parks. Charcoal Club, a local artist club, discusses modern Mount Vernon parks more in sorrow than in anger. Foe of newfangled stuns his hearers with a vicious onslaught in prose and poetry." So that's how they were received in 1919. The style of American City Beautiful was on its last legs, if not gone by that time. It was outdated. It's a beautiful design, I don't dispute it. The trees, however, the tree part of it is another story entirely. There is no authentic tree plan that we can find a complete one to substantiate the Parisian uniformity. I'd just like to go on as quickly as I can. The spirit of the times, and our spirit of the times, involves a commitment to the ideal of humanity living in harmony with the natural world and with forms of life with which we have to share the planet. An ideal that encourages restraint and cooperation, not intrusion, disruption, and crushing dominance. One of the main purposes of public parks is to express and encourage these ideals of harmony. The spirit of our times is green-minded, environmentally alert, dedicated to sustainability, wholeness, public participation, cooperation, transparency, and accountability. So what is the conclusion of the matter? There appears to be only fragmentary evidence of the questionable authenticity for the Conservancy's landscape plan, a plan derived at second remove from 17th century French classical sources. It is thus a copy of a copy, and not a very convincing one at that, quite out of place in its present historical and aesthetic context. It is a plan lacking in imagination and deficient in creativity. It bears an unfortunate resemblance to a design by the State Highway Administration or the tree layout for a suburban parking lot. The Mount Vernon parks, the rich, eclectic variety of their architectural setting, the magnificent statuary in a number of styles, the landscaping and the trees planted by successive generations in a variety of species and configurations, all these come together to form an ensemble of mutual adjustment, an inspiring dialogue among its elements. One of this nation's most outstanding examples of our collective creativity, a unique cultural landscape, an American original. This is something people sense intuitively and explains the admiration and attachment they feel for the parks, their architecture, and the trees. A harmonious unity and variety. This is the best heritage of our time and of its spirit, to be treasured and protected for our own benefit and for the good of future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a copy of that for our records as well?
Oh, it's written. I'll copy it for you. Yes, I will.
Thank you. If you want to wrap up, yes, sir.
Very quickly. Excuse me. At this point, we believe CHAP has just three courses of action from which to choose. Number one, it could approve the plan as it stands or with minor adjustments or amendments. Given the growing public opposition and the Conservancy's failure to act in good faith as instructed by CHAP, this is obviously not a viable option. Number two, CHAP can suggest that the committee meet once again. The Alliance is willing to meet with the Conservancy again, but there would have to be sensible ground rules. Equal number of participants on both sides, a neutral moderator agreeable to both sides, and most important, the Conservancy would have to first demonstrate a willingness to significantly change the objectionable parts of their plan. Otherwise, we would just be wasting time once again. Number three, the third and final choice we believe is the best one. The Conservancy has clearly demonstrated its unwillingness to compromise or to alter or modify its proposals. In our discussions with them and in 4 successive review meetings here with CHAP, we believe it is now time to make a decision. We therefore recommend that CHAP finally and once and for all reject the deeply flawed remainder of the Conservancy's plan and save the trees.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay. There are a number of folks